Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. Dynamite tonight was from the Sames Auto Arena in Laredo, Texas. And Dynamite tonight, I thought the show wasn't that good, in my opinion. This was not that good of a show. The show tonight felt more like we were watching 2 hours of AEW Dark and AEW Rampage. The show felt more of a combination of those two than a Dynamite tonight. But tonight on Dynamite, we had an 8-man tag where it was Orange Cassidy, Billy Gunn, and the Acclaimed. They ended up taking on Jay Lethal, Sonjay Dutt, Satnam Singh, and Jeff Jarrett. We had a Texas Tornado match where it was Claudio, Castagnoli, and Jon Moxley versus Preston, Vance, and Roosh. Mark Briscoe was in action. It was good to see Mark Briscoe, in the ring again. And he had taken on Josh Woods. Jungle Boy was in action. Jungle Boy Jack Perry. And he had taken on Brian Cage. We also saw Hangman and Page versus Kip Sabian. And the woman main event of the show tonight, where we had a three-way match, where it was Ruby Soho versus Toni Storm and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. But overall, Dynamite tonight wasn't that good of a show. And also we had a surprise return, which was great, which I will get to explaining. But before I get into the review, if you guys haven't checked out my previous video, my vlog of Monday Night Raw from Barclays Center is up. So check out my vlog of that, if you guys haven't seen it. But let's jump right into the review. Got a Mountain Dew here. Going to crack into it. So let's jump right into the review. So Dynamite opened up tonight with the 8-man tag. It was Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, Sonjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh versus Orange Cassidy, the Acclaimed, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens, and Billy Gunn. Did not care for this match. So the match started off with Anthony Bowens and Jay Lethal. Both guys were exchanging holds. Bowens ended up hitting a snapmare on Jay Lethal, and he ended up rolling up Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal kicked out. Lethal ended up going for a pin, and we had Bowens end up kicking out. Bowens ended up taking down Jay Lethal, and he tagged in Max Caster. So the Acclaimed ended up double teaming on Jay Lethal, and it led to a pinfall attempt by Caster, to which Jay Lethal ended up kicking out. Jay Lethal ended up delivering a chop to Max Caster, and he ended up sending him into the corner, and Jay Lethal ended up making the tag to Jeff Jarrett, which, sad news, Jeff Jarrett, his father, Jerry Jarrett, ended up passing away yesterday. So very sad, but I understand why, the match, was made and have Jeff Jarrett go out there, in honor of his dad. Jerry Jarrett died at 80. He was 80 years old. But Jeff Jarrett ended up coming in, and we had Jeff Jarrett end up delivering a chop to Max Caster. Caster ended up hitting a drop kick to Jarrett. So Caster ended up staying on Jeff Jarrett. He kept on attacking him, but Jeff Jarrett came back and took Caster down. Jarrett then tagged in Satnam Singh. So Satnam Singh ended up coming into the ring we had a standoff between Caster and Satnam. Billy Gunn was looking for a tag, but Orange Cassidy ended up tagging in instead. So Satnam mocked Orange Cassidy's height. He was like, so then Satnam ended up tagging in Sonjay Dutt. So Sonjay Dutt ended up mocking Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy ended up stepping back, and he ended up tagging in Billy Gunn, daddy ass. So Sonjay Dutt then tagged in Jeff Jarrett, and then we saw Austin Colton Gunn. They ended up coming out. They ended up arriving on the stage. Of course, they're the new AEW World Tag Team Champions. They ended up beating the Acclaimed. So we had the Gunns end up mocking their father. Jeff Jarrett ended up trying to take advantage of the distraction. So Jeff Jarrett ended up sending Billy Gunn into the ropes. And so Jeff Jarrett starts his strut, like that. So Billy Gunn ended up getting back up. He ended up knocking Jay Lethal off the apron. Jarrett ended up keeping the attack on Billy Gunn. And then Jarrett tagged in Jay Lethal. So we had Jay Lethal end up going for the cover, to which Billy Gunn ended up kicking out. So the Gunn Club was still on the stage. They were cracking jokes at their father. Jay Lethal tagged in Sonjay Dutt, who was stomping away at Billy Gunn. So Sonjay Dutt tagged Jeff Jarrett back in. Jarrett started taunting Max Caster on the apron. And then, he was, going at it at Billy Gunn. So we had Jeff Jarrett end up tagging in Jay Lethal. So Lethal and Jarrett end up double teaming on Billy Gunn. So Jeff Jarrett ended up doing a leg sweep to Billy Gunn. Lethal ended up staying on Billy Gunn. He was choking Billy Gunn out. And then we had Jay Lethal end up tagging in Satnam Sin. Satnam ended up knocking the Acclaimed off the apron. And then he went and he also knocked off Orange Cassidy. So we had Satnam end up going after Billy Gunn. So Billy Gunn started fighting back with some punches and kicks to Satnam's gut. And Billy Gunn ended up knocking down Satnam, which was crazy. So the Acclaimed ended up rushing in. They went after Sonjay Dutt and Jay Lethal. But both Caster and Bowens ended up getting taken out by Satnam. So Billy Gunn then ended up hitting the Famouser on Satnam, which was crazy. So Jeff Jarrett ended up tagging in, and he had the fake Golden Globe, which ended up knocking Billy Gunn down. So Jay Lethal ended up knocking down Anthony Bowens from the apron. Billy Gunn ended up sending Jay Lethal out of the ring, and he climbed up to the top. And then Billy Gunn was knocked down by Jeff Jarrett. Orange Cassidy then ended up delivering an orange punch to Jeff Jarrett. So Sonjay Dutt was still in the ring. Orange Cassidy ended up hitting his vicious kicks. The little, those kicks. So Orange Cassidy ended up going up to the top, and he ended up taking out Jay Lethal out of the ring over the top rope. Bowens ended up coming back into the ring. He climbed up to the top. He ended up hitting the leg drop to Sonjay Dutt, and he ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Orange Cassidy, the Acclaimed, and Billy Gunn ended up winning the match. Overall, did not care for this match at all, in my opinion. Satnam, did nothing in this match. He just stood in there, and he's mocking Orange Cassidy's height, tagged back in Sonjay Dutt, and then just Satnam just ends up taking out the Acclaimed, and pretty much that's it. That's all that Satnam did in the match. He's the great Khali of AEW. But like I said, overall, didn't care for this match. So then we had a recap, and it was a video package hyping up Bryan Danielson and MJF, which of course is leading to their 60-minute Iron Man match at Revolution, which we are 2 weeks away from Revolution. Shaped up to be a good show. The card is looking great. So there's going to be a great, exciting match between Bryan and MJF in this 60-minute Iron Man match. And then we had the Texas Tornado tag team match. It was a Blackpool Combat Club, Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli versus Rush and Preston Vance. And this was a good match here. We had Moxley and Claudio end up making their way out to the ring. And they end up getting jumped by Rush and Preston Vance in the crowd. So, as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Mox was fighting Rush. Preston Vance ended up getting away from Claudio. And the match ended up beginning. So Mox ended up working on Preston Vance in the corner. Rush blindsided Moxley, which led to Rush and Preston Vance double teaming on Moxley. Vance ended up sending Moxley into the corner. Rush started taunting the fans from the turnbuckle. And just Preston Vance and Rush were continuing to beat down on Moxley. Claudio ended up making it to the apron, and he ended up attacking both Rush and Preston Vance before he ended up coming in. Claudio ended up taking Preston Vance down, and we had Claudio end up getting a near fall on Preston Vance. Mox ended up grabbing some chairs, and he ended up bringing the chairs into the ring. So Jose, the assistant, ended up getting chased off, and Moxley ended up dealing with Rush on the outside. So Hangman and Page was watching the match backstage, of course, because we get Hangman and Page and Jon Moxley, their feud there. So Preston Vance ended up getting sent face first into a chair that was set up in the corner. Rush ended up trying to go after Moxley and Castagnoli, and he was sent back to the outside. Moxley ended up biting Preston Vance on his forehead, and Vance ended up getting in the way. So we had Rush started moving around the tables and chairs, and as Dynamite came back from the commercial, we had Mox end up getting a comeback. He ended up sending Preston Vance out of the ring, and Rush and Moxley were trading forearms. We had Preston Vance end up decking Moxley in the skull with the chain, and he ended up going for the cover, and Moxley ended up kicking out. Preston Vance continued to attack Moxley, and we had Claudio end up coming back to the ring. He ended up grabbing the chain, and he ended up clocking Rush and Preston Vance, and Claudio wrapped the chain around his hand. He punched Preston Vance, and he picked him up and did the swing. And we had Preston Vance bleeding profusely. So Claudio ended up making the cover on Preston Vance, but Rush ended up breaking up the pin. So Claudio ended up getting to his feet. He ended up hitting a European uppercut on Rush. So Preston Vance ended up taking advantage, and he ended up getting a one-over on Moxley. He ended up making a pin attempt, and Moxley ended up kicking out, to which Moxley was bleeding also. It's like every single match Moxley has, he has to bleed. So what did it take? 15 minutes for Moxley to bleed this time? So we had Rush and Claudio end up going at it. Jose, the assistant, ended up stopping a neutralizer attempt, and he ended up pinning a chair to the back of Claudio Castagnoli. So we had Wheeler Yuta end up running down. Wheeler Yuta ended up sending Jose up the ramp. Claudio ended up going back to attack Rush, but he was taken to the corner with a belly-to-belly suplex. Rush followed up with some stomps to Claudio's face. Claudio ended up hitting the spear to Rush, and he ended up going for the cover. Preston Vance ended up breaking up the pin. So Rush ended up sending Claudio out, and Claudio ended up hitting the European uppercut when trying to hit a plancha to Rush. Moxley ended up stopping Preston Vance's attempt by wrapping the chain around his neck, and he ended up hitting Preston Vance with an anvil and hammer elbows, and we had Moxley end up following it up with a choke, which forced Preston Vance to tap out. So there you go. Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli ended up winning the match. Post-match, we went backstage, and Hangman and Page was being beamed down by Kip Sabian as the Butcher and the Blade were holding him up. So that's when Kip Sabian ended up being down on Page, and pretty much that was basically that. But pretty good match it was. And then we had JR. He ended up interviewing Wardlow. So Wardlow ended up talking about the impact that his father had on his early life, and the reunion they had much later on. He ended up saying that they were able to start rebuilding that relationship until his father came down with stage 4 cancer, which happened right around the beginning of his wrestling career. So Wardlow ended up explaining about growing his hair out in honor of his father and what he dealt with, and why Samoa Joe clipping his hair means more than just a simple haircut. So Wardlow ended up saying he will be looking to take back what's his, and that's the TNT Championship. So, but really enjoyed this interview with Wardlow. You know, you feel for Wardlow, you know, about him, talking about his father and how his father had an impact on his life, and you know about how him and his father were trying to rebuild their relationship until his father came down with cancer. That's very sad. So, but really liked what Wardlow had to say. This was a good interview. So then we had Mark Briscoe versus Josh Woods. This was pretty much an easy win for Mark Briscoe here. Match started off with both Josh Woods and Briscoe tying up. Woods ended up getting the upper hand on Briscoe, to which he was only to be taken down with a shoulder tackle by Briscoe and sent Woods to the outside. So Mark Sterling had the referee distracted, and Briscoe ended up getting attacked by Toni Nese and Ari Daivari. So then the Lucha Brothers end up coming out. Penta and Rey Fenix end up taking out Toni Nese and Ari Daivari. Briscoe ended up getting caught with a corkscrew suplex off the apron by Josh Woods. And then Dynamite went to commercial. Then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Briscoe delivered some offense on Josh Woods, and he got cut off, and Briscoe ended up blocking a swing by Josh Woods, and he ended up nailing Josh Woods in the face, and then Josh Woods ended up delivering a shoulder to Briscoe. So Briscoe ended up going for a chair, and the ref ended up telling Briscoe not to use it. Briscoe then ended up setting the chair up. He leapt off of the chair to the outside and took Josh Woods down, which was great. So Josh Woods was back in the ring, and he ended up going into the corner. Briscoe was able to take Josh Woods down with a shoulder powerbomb off the turnbuckle, and he ended up going for the cover, and Woods kicked out. Briscoe was setting up for the J Driller, but Josh Woods ended up fighting out of it, and he ended up hitting a deadlift suplex for a near fall on Briscoe. So Woods delivered a powerbomb and a knee strike to Briscoe. Briscoe ended up fighting out of a double underhook, and he ended up going for a neck breaker, only for Josh Woods to go for a suplex, but Briscoe ended up fighting out of that. So Briscoe ended up hitting a Death Valley driver, and then he ended up climbing up to the top, and he pointed to the sky, in honor of his brother Jay Briscoe, and he ended up hitting the frog bow on Josh Woods, and he ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Mark Briscoe ended up winning the match. Post-match, Mark Briscoe ended up talking to the camera, wishing, Jay Briscoe, passed away. So you end up saying, this is for you, Jay. But overall, it was a meh match, in my opinion. It was an easy win for Mark Briscoe. And then we had RENEE PAQUETTE. RENEE PAQUETTE was interviewing Adam Cole, baby. So Adam Cole ended up talking about being excited to be back in AEW and the improvement in his health on his road to recovery. So RENEE ended up asking Adam Cole, what's the next chapter looking like? Adam Cole ended up saying that he hasn't had a chance to explore things yet, but he will. Cole ended up talking about the roster being stacked and that he needs to be prepared when he's ready to come back. Adam Cole ended up teasing that there are those that he wants to face. He ended up saying that things will be good for AEW and good for him. So pretty much that was basically that. So Adam Cole, he's still, preparing to come back into the ring. So when that comes, it's going to be great. So then we had MJF. MJF, AEW World Champion. He ended up coming out, and the crowd started chanting, "No hablo español." And then we had MJF, the AEW World Champion, ended up coming out, got boos from the crowd. So MJF got on the mic, and he was responding to the crowd's chants. He was like, "No hablo español," which was hilarious. So he ended up sending the heat up high, and he ended up talking about turning his back on the fans before they could turn their back on him. MJF ended up saying that he's at least honest about being the devil, but Bryan Danielson is not as honest about himself. He ended up saying the crowd doesn't love him. The crowd doesn't love MJF. And he ended up saying that Bryan is a worthless sack of trash. So MJF ended up saying that he's not here to focus on that, nor is it the only reason he hates Bryan. MJF ended up saying that he hates Bryan because the man is here telling the fans that he is better than him, that he is better than MJF. So the crowd started doing the yes chant. So MJF ended up calling the crowd over this. So he ended up asking if it's because Bryan entertains them, because of his technical mastery, because he puts on 5-star bangers. But the only way to know you're the best in the world is if you're the man that is holding the AEW World Championship. Something that Bryan has never been able to accomplish. So MJF ended up saying that at Revolution, he knows Bryan is going to give him everything he's got, putting on a big performance for the fans, and that he's going to put him through the hardest match of his life. But after that clock strikes 0, he will be victorious. MJF ended up saying that he will be victorious. So MJF ended up saying that at Revolution he will prove that he's the best wrestler out there. Because his name is... And then MJF ended up stopping to yell at the crowd for, sing-along before introducing a man who's known Bryan his entire career. A man Bryan looks to as a mentor. So MJF ended up introducing Christopher Daniels. So Christopher Daniels ended up making his way out to the ring. MJF ended up asking Christopher Daniels to tell the truth about Bryan. So Christopher Daniels ended up giving a disclaimer saying that he was paid by MJF to pretty much talk trash on Bryan live on TV. And Christopher Daniels ended up saying to MJF, Bryan can knock your dick in the dirt. Which, that was awesome. I liked when Christopher Daniels ended up saying that to MJF. So Christopher Daniels ended up saying that Bryan hit him so hard, he thought he would die in the ring all those years ago. And that was when he knew Bryan would be great. He ended up saying that he saw the talent that helped create Ring of Honor, which gave wrestling fans what they needed, just like AEW did when it opened 4 years ago. So Christopher Daniels ended up saying, without Ring of Honor, there probably wouldn't be an AEW, and there certainly wouldn't be an MJF. He ended up saying that Bryan wanted to learn everything he could about pro wrestling. And Christopher Daniels ended up saying that he watched him do so over and over and over until watching Bryan become a world champion. So he ended up saying that Bryan knows what it takes to be a world champion. And he's on the path to becoming one again. And that's why MJF hates him so much. So Christopher Daniels ended up saying not only because he's about to take what MJF has, but because he is what MJF wishes he was. The best wrestler in the world today. So he ended up saying that MJF is just a fraud. So MJF knocked the mic out of Christopher Daniels' hand. He was not pleased with what Christopher Daniels had to say about all this. So Christopher Daniels ended up clocking MJF in the jaw. MJF ended up responding with a kick to Christopher Daniels. And he ended up targeting Christopher Daniels' arm and his shoulder. And then Bryan ended up running down to make the save. MJF ended up retreating out of the ring. He ended up making his way up the ramp, wanted nothing to do with Bryan. Bryan stared MJF down. And then he checked on Christopher Daniels. And pretty much that was basically that. But overall, I thought this segment was enjoyable. MJF and Bryan Danielson, this is all leading up to their 60-minute Iron Man match at Revolution, which is going to be great. And then we had Jungle Boy versus Brian Cage. And this was a pretty meh match in my opinion. So we had Jungle Boy end up coming out first. Brian Cage then made his way out. He was accompanied by Prince Nana. So the match started off with Brian Cage in control of the match. And he was making great use of his strength until Jungle Boy was able to send Cage out of the ring. He ended up hitting some topes and a plancha to Brian Cage, only for Brian Cage to catch Jungle Boy in midair. He ended up sending Jungle Boy into the apron. So Brian Cage was in control of the match as Dynamite went to commercial. So then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Jungle Boy got caught again by Brian Cage as Jungle Boy was starting to mount a comeback. So Cage ended up delivering a big boot to Jungle Boy. So Jungle Boy end up dropping Cage with a drop kick. Cage end up sending Jungle Boy into the corner, end up throwing him around, and he eventually end up hitting a power bomb to Jungle Boy. He end up going for the cover, and Jungle Boy end up kicking out. Jungle Boy slipped out of a F5 attempt from Brian Cage, and he ended up getting a near fall, to which Cage ended up kicking out. So we had Jungle Boy end up hitting a double stomp on Cage, which was followed up by a diving splash. So Jungle Boy ended up going for the cover, and Cage ended up kicking out. Jungle Boy then delivered a Death Valley driver, and he ended up going for the cover, and Cage ended up kicking out. So Brian Cage was caught with a crucifix bomb and a kick to the head from Jungle Boy. So Jungle Boy ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Jungle Boy ended up winning the match. Post-match, Jungle Boy celebrated on the ramp, and we had the return of Christian Cage. We haven't seen Christian in a while. Of course, he had an injury. His arm was in a sling, and he came out wearing the sling. Christian Cage ended up smirking at Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy ended up charging at Christian Cage, and Christian Cage ended up having what looked like to be a pepper spray or mace that he had on him, and he sprayed it at Jungle Boy. He sprayed it right in Jungle Boy's eyes, and Christian was pleased with that, and he ended up standing over Jungle Boy. So then we saw Christian Cage taking his sling off, revealing that his arm is healed. So he ended up locking in a chokehold on Jungle Boy, and then he turned it into a kill switch onto the stage. So Jungle Boy was laid out, and pretty much that was basically that. So it looks like we might get Christian Cage versus Jungle Boy at Revolution, which this is probably leading up to that. We're probably going to get the match at Revolution. But overall, pretty meh match from Jungle Boy and Brian Cage. Brian Cage, once again, taking another loss. So then it was revealed that the Gunn Club, Austin and Colton Gunn, will defend the titles in a triple threat tag team match at Revolution. And that there will be a tag team battle royal, followed up by the casino battle royal in the coming weeks. So RENEE PAQUETTE was interrupted by the Acclaimed, and then revealing that they're exercising their rematch clause, making the match at Revolution a 4-way tag team match. So there you go. That's going to be at Revolution, a 4-way tag team match. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, we saw the Elite. We had, of course, the Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Don Callis and Michael Nakazawa was there. And they were talking about the upcoming NBA game, which is going to be on, of course, TNT. So then they got interrupted by Top Flight, Dante and Darius Martin, and AR Fox. So Dante and Darius and AR Fox end up challenging the Elite to a trios match on Rampage. So Don Callis ended up shutting this down, for the Elite to have this trios match on Rampage. So we had some taunting going on, and it led to the match being accepted by the Elite. So pretty much that was basically how we're going to get a trios match on Rampage on Friday, which Rampage is going to be on at 7 o'clock on Friday. So you got Rampage and then SmackDown after that on Fox. And then we had Kip Sabian versus Hangman and Page. And this was a meh match in my opinion. This was an easy win for Hangman. So we had Kip Sabian, out there being accompanied by Penelope Ford. his wife Penelope Ford. And then Hangman and Page, came out. So the match ended up starting with Page ended up clocking Kip Sabian with an elbow to his face. Kip Sabian was able to turn things around. He started taunting Page. So Page ended up taking Sabian down. So we had Page ended up catching Kip Sabian in midair and slammed Kip Sabian down to the mat. Kip Sabian ended up leaving the ring, and he managed to take advantage of the distraction by Penelope Ford. So then, as Dynamite came back from the commercial, we had a superplex averted as Kip Sabian ended up getting to the ring. He was sent over the top rope to the outside by Page. Page ended up grabbing Kip Sabian, which didn't allow Penelope Ford to block the Irish Whip. So Page ended up sending Kip Sabian into the nearest barricade, and he ended up sending him back into the ring. So Page ended up delivering a pop-up powerbomb to Kip Sabian, and then he ended up going for the cover, and Kip Sabian ended up kicking out. So Page was going to go for the Deadeye to Kip Sabian, but Kip Sabian ended up breaking out of it, and he ended up going for a Burning Hammer, only to take a clothesline from Page, and then Page followed up with a Deadeye, and so Page ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Hangman and Page ended up winning the match. So post-match, we had Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli end up coming down, and they end up confronting Page. So Moxley ended up getting on the mic. He ended up saying that he and Page do not have unfinished business. He ended up saying after all the battles together, he has respect for Page, but not fear. He ended up saying that there is no chance in hell that Page will ever beat him again. Moxley ended up telling Page to let it go. Page then grabbed the mic from Moxley. Page ended up saying that he isn't happy with how the last match went down, and that it ends when two men go back into that cold, dark alley, and only one leaves. So Page ended up saying that he thinks this ends at Revolution. Moxley ended up saying that he was hoping Page would say that, hoping Page would want to go down this cold, dark alley. Moxley ended up saying that Page has no friends. And then the Dark Order ended up making their way out. We had Alex Reynolds, Evil Uno, John Silver ended up coming out. Evil Uno got on the mic, and he ended up letting Moxley know that they've had the back of Page for the past couple of years. And despite Page telling them not to get involved, Evil Uno ended up telling Moxley that the Dark Order is not afraid of them, and that nor is Uno afraid of Moxley. So this all led to a stare down between Evil Uno and Moxley. So before Moxley ended up speaking up, he looked past Evil Uno, and he ended up telling Page that at Revolution, he wants a Texas death match. So that was that. So it looks like we're going to be getting a Texas death match between Page and Moxley at Revolution. Should be, a good match. And then we had the Jericho Appreciation Society. Tony Schiavone was backstage with them. So Jericho ended up calling out Ricky Starks, saying that he can beat him anytime, anywhere. But there will be no more matches between them. So Danny Garcia ended up letting Ricky Starks know that they will face off on Rampage Friday. So Danny Garcia ended up promising to expose Ricky Starks as an absolute fraud. So pretty much that was basically that. So then we had a recap of what happened between Stokely Hathaway and Hook. And then we had the Firm standing by. Stokely Hathaway ended up talking about what Hook did to him and his search for justice. So Matt Hardy was called into question on the matter. So he ended up saying that we know that Hook has been suspended pending investigation. So pretty much that was that. And then we had the main event, which was a triple threat match, Toni Storm versus Ruby Soho versus Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. So Toni Storm ended up coming out. She was accompanied by Saraya. So both Toni Storm and Saraya were taunting the fans. And we had Ruby Soho end up coming out. And then, of course, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, ended up making her way down to the ring. So she was accompanied by Jamie Hayter. So the match got underway, which this was just an okay women's match here. So Britt Baker ended up going after Toni Storm, and we had Ruby Soho and Britt Baker going at it. Britt Baker ended up taking Ruby Soho down for a near fall. Britt Baker ended up getting caught by Toni Storm, and we had two of them, exchanging strikes. Toni Storm was sent into Britt Baker on the apron. Ruby Soho ended up sending Toni Storm out of the ring. So later on in the match, we had Toni Storm end up sending Ruby Soho to Britt Baker. Britt Baker ended up getting momentum as she ended up going after Toni Storm with some offense, leading to a neckbreaker DDT combo on Toni Storm. And Ruby Soho ended up following up, and she ended up going for the cover on Toni Storm. Toni Storm kicked out. Saraya ended up catching the ankle of Britt Baker from the apron, which led to Toni Storm, take control. And she was looking to go for a hip attack, but it got intercepted by Ruby Soho. So Britt Baker ended up taking advantage. She ended up getting one over on Ruby for a near fall. And it got broken up by Toni Storm. The pin ended up getting broken up by Toni Storm. So the crowd at this point was chanting DMD. They were behind Britt Baker here. So Toni Storm ended up delivering a suplex on Ruby Soho. And Britt Baker ended up rolling up, which we had Ruby Soho end up kicking out at 2. So Britt Baker and Toni Storm were trading blows, and Britt Baker ended it with a forearm smash followed by a neck breaker to Toni Storm. So we had Britt Baker end up going for the cover. Toni Storm ended up kicking out. Ruby Soho started to get some momentum. She ended up climbing up to the top, but she ended up getting taken down by Toni Storm. Toni Storm locked in the Boston Crab. Britt Baker ended up trying to go for the lockjaw, and this got broken up as Toni Storm got to the corner. So Britt Baker was in the corner, and Saraya ended up spray painting an L on Toni Storm's butt. So we had Toni Storm delivering a hip attack on Britt Baker in the corner. So we had Ruby Soho end up shoving Toni Storm away, and she ended up getting the pin. So there you go. Ruby Soho ended up winning the match. Post-match, Ruby started to celebrate, but she was confronted by Saraya and Toni Storm. So we had Saraya and Toni Storm end up retreating to the outside. Wanted nothing to do with Ruby Soho. And pretty much that was basically how Dynamite went off the air. Overall, this match was okay. Nothing great, nothing special here. But overall, Dynamite, just not that good of a show tonight. It was terrible, in my opinion. It felt more like a 2-hour AEW Dark and a 2-hour Rampage combined. But anyways, that's it for the Dynamite review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and the next video, I'm going to see Ant-Man tomorrow. So, heard good things about the film. So, that will be the next video, a movie review on, Ant-Man. So, until then, see you all later.